Emancipation is releasing across the U.S. on December 9, 2022. The slave drama follows Peter, who escapes a plantation in Louisiana. The journey isn't an easy one, as Peter has to navigate through so much in his search for freedom. But the Will Smith starrer has sparked some controversy prior to its release. So let's get into all of this and talk about why releasing a film like this in 2022 is so important.
I will come back to you!
First up, did you know that this film is based on a true story? The film revolves around Peter, who escapes from a Louisiana plantation after being nearly killed by whipping. He avoids ruthless hunters and more horrors on his journey up north. Will Smith plays the escaped slave who became known to the world as Whipped Peter. Photos of the keloid scars on his back were circulated everywhere to show the brutality of slavery in Emancipation. The movie shows Peter's painful journey as he makes his way across Louisiana's swamps to get away from the plantation owners who almost killed him.
In my body. More times than I can count.
He's wounded but fueled by the hope of being free. Did you know that this movie is based on the true story of Gordon, a former slave? In the movie, his name is Peter. Gordon's pictures of his naked back were circulated in 1863 and earned him the name Whipped Peter. These also served as evidence to the abolitionist movement of the brutality of American slavery. Next, some more about Whipped Peter. Whipped Peter's unforgettable photograph is preserved in history books forever. Peter is seated with his battered back toward the camera, covered in keloid scars. The image depicts the physical manifestation of the horrors of slavery and the inhumanity that human beings are capable of. He was a slave on John and Bridget Lyons' Louisiana plantation and went through more than just the indignity of being one. He was almost whipped to death, after which he escaped and made it to a Union encampment in Baton Rouge. To think there were so many more who were in the same position. So much history has already been erased, and that's why it's important to preserve and retell stories like this. They serve as a painful reminder of how brutal humans can be to other fellow humans. In Emancipation, director Fuqua and Will Smith make sure we witness Peter's unfathomable suffering. Moving on, how did the producers of the film trace the story of Peter? Fuqua collaborated with historian Erica Armstrong Dunbar to imagine Peter's escape from slavery and eventual enlistment in the Union Army. This was pretty hard, considering there isn't much everyone knows about him beyond that horrific photograph. Still, they did as much research as possible so Smith could play the part respectfully. Now, what does the director of the film, Antoine Fuqua, have to say about it? In an exclusive interview with Vanity Fair, the cast and crew of the film Emancipation answered some really important and even heavy questions about the film. The first question that Antoine Fuqua was asked was pretty complicated. The interviewer asked if it's appropriate to show trauma and violence aimed at black people, in particular black men, on TV. Many people are of the opinion that it should be avoided at all costs. So why did Fuqua portray violence against a black man in his movie? This question is extremely sensitive and complex, and Fuqua responded in a very nuanced manner, saying he really values everyone's viewpoint. He also said that this hurts, and the conversation is emotional. The brutality against many people throughout the world, black people especially in our country, is far too normalized. We see it on the news, on social media, and practically everywhere. It's inescapable. Fuqua said that the only thing that he can do is show stories that serve as an inspiration for everyone else. This is because everyone has a duty to do so. Fuqua said that we are citizens of the same country that kidnapped us, subjected us to forced labor, and brutally beat us. That's why, in his opinion, these things should never be forgotten, and we approach the whole situation without being bitter, going into it with an open mind, with the hope of starting a dialogue about it and seeing it as a form of healing is how the movie should be approached, according to him. Next, Fuqua doesn't see this as a slave movie. A lot of people have criticized the producers and director of this movie for making yet another slave movie, but Fuqua said that it isn't one because he didn't go out hunting for a slave movie as a filmmaker, and that's why he never thought of Emancipation as one. It was more spiritual for Will and Antoine. He talked about how he wrote Sacred Motivation at the top of his script because it's a tale of triumph. According to Fuqua, being a slave is to die. Peter had mental freedom and his mind was free, but his body was a slave. The director said we should look for inspiration in his open heart and unbridled spirit. Peter could love freely. He had the freedom to think about others before himself. He was free to inspire. Next, he was also asked about how he would want people to feel while watching Emancipation. His response was pretty emotional. The interviewer talked about his experience as a black man watching the film and being reminded of the brutality that his ancestors went through, and Fuqua said that he understands completely. That's not all, though. He recognized that the awareness that your forefathers actually underwent something like that just makes watching the film harder. Still, according to Fuqua, reminders like this film are essential because we must never forget the degree of violence that people are ready to inflict on other people because of greed and money. He gave the example of the Trump circus, saying it's about money and power. Fuqua also had a piece of advice that went something like this: never allow anyone to undermine your integrity or steal your spirit. Everyone's intellect is included in the term emancipation, not just their physical body. The best path to be on is the noble path of love and selfless love, but you need to have a goal while treading it. That's why Fuqua sees emancipation as a love story. Coming up, how did Fuqua react to the Will Smith Oscars incident? Apparently, the director of Emancipation didn't register the incident when it first happened. Rather, it struck him later because still suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of being in Louisiana's wetlands. The director was receiving calls and texts from people constantly after it happened and was dealing with other issues, so he couldn't deal with Smith directly. But because Fuqua spent 2 years with Will and had never met a sweeter person, it didn't feel like a real incident to him at all because he knew a very different Will on set. According to Fuqua, he showed kindness to everyone. There were 300-something extras and the military, and Will would go around and shake hands and give hugs. Due to COVID, the crew even had to prevent Will from doing that. That's why Fuqua saw a very different side of Will and perceived the whole incident very differently. That Will Smith on the Oscar stage was very foreign to him. In the interview with Vanity Fair, Fuqua admitted that Will is the most kind-hearted individual he's ever met. Fuqua also praised Chris Rock and said he's a nice person. He also talked to Rock after the incident and concluded that it was regrettable from both ends. Fuqua also thinks that Will and Chris should get together, either publicly or privately, and resolve everything and put the bad blood behind them. According to the director, it would be a great statement. Do you agree? Now, when did they decide the movie was coming out? After the Oscars incident, people thought the movie would never even see the light of day. Antoine Fuqua was quick to refute these claims. Of course, because Apple produced the movie, it was always a huge part of the conversation surrounding Emancipation. With Apple, every conversation was long and detailed according to the director. They were really considerate of everyone who worked on the movie, including Will Smith, which is great considering the incident sparked a lot of hate from everywhere. Fuqua also clarified that there was never any discussion about the movie not being released. He also said that everyone was constantly evaluating everything and trying to gauge public opinion. It's great to see that this whole process was so collaborative. The crew also did a trial run and showed the movie to a few people before finally deciding on a release date. These people discussed the movie and then Apple decided. In the end, the choice to release it was taken by Apple's distribution and financial decision makers, and Fuqua praised them for still going through with it. Finally, why is it so important that the movie comes out? Fuqua was very adamant about the movie being released. He raised the question, isn't 400 years of brutality and enslavement more significant than one unpleasant moment? After all this is happening in Hollywood, where there have been a number of people honored for doing some truly repulsive things, and some of them worse than the Oscar slap.
Oh, wow! Wow!
Not only is this movie culturally significant, but it can give everyone strength and remind them to keep going no matter what.
Never break me.
That's a wrap for this video. Are you going to be watching Emancipation in theaters? Do you think they made the right decision by not scrapping the movie? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.